I am a proud holder of one of the worst passports in the world, according to the Passport Index. And that usually means a lot of stress and frustration when it's time to travel. I need a visa to visit almost every country in the world, and if I'm even lucky to get one, I'm not really guaranteed entry into the country, and there's also a very real possibility of facing discrimination and harassment when crossing borders. If you have a weak passport, you know what I'm talking about. Isn't it funny how much control this little booklet has over our lives? How much it influences our ability to see the world? You see, a passport is a personal key to adventure. Well, in theory, because not all passports are created equal. For people who are born in or are from countries with strong passports, or people who have actually gone ahead to get a strong passport, traveling feels like flipping channels on Netflix. You're bored of Italy? Try Australia. Tired of Japan? Head to Indonesia. You can pretty much jet off to most places with no stress. Just show up, show your passport, and usually you're let into the country, no questions asked. Easy, right? But while you're casually booking flights to Paris, someone else out there is stuck filling endless forms just to visit, I don't know, virtually everywhere else. The first time this notion of passport privilege really hit me was a few years ago when I was in college. I was getting ready to do a trip to Morocco. It was a study trip, and I was going to be going with a lot of other course mates as well. There were maybe about 20 of us, a very international group. There were people from the US, Japan, Russia, and myself, a Nigerian. The only African in the group planning to visit another African country. But guess what? I was the only one in the group who needed a visa. It just made no sense to me. Why should I, an African, go through this lengthy process just to visit another country back on my home continent? I think the most upsetting thing for me is that when I would try to talk to others in the group to tell them how I needed a visa, they couldn't even understand what I was saying. Some of them did not even know what a visa was. Literally all they had to do was pack their bags and get ready to go. And that is when it hit me, wow, the privilege is real. And this example is just within the African context. I've actually made a video on this channel discussing the difficulties traveling in Africa for Africans, which I would actually recommend you to watch if you haven't seen it, just so you can get a bit more of an understanding of the issues that exist. But the struggle extends to other contexts as well, a more global context. As a Nigerian passport holder, I'm very familiar with the difficulties that come with planning most trips. And for fellow weak passport holders, you know that our experience is never as easy as just booking flights, booking a hotel, and showing up at the airport. First, you typically have to plan several months in advance because chances are you probably need a visa to visit wherever you're planning to visit. To apply for the visa, you need to provide some sort of proof that you are employed, or if you're studying, that you are studying. You also have to provide some proof that you have enough money to afford your trip, and in a lot of cases, they will ask you to provide more money than you actually need for the trip. You usually will need an invitation letter from someone in the country you're going to visit, or some sort of proof just showing what you're going to the country to do. If you have a program, if it's holiday, you just have to convince them you're going for a legitimate reason. Some countries actually require you to have booked your flights as well. You need to prove somehow that you're not planning to stay too long in that country. And in extreme cases, some places actually ask you to get a police report to prove that you're not a criminal. So you know all those stories you hear where people are like, oh, I quit my job, sold everything I had, and just moved to a new country with $1,000 to my name. No, we don't do that. And by the way, these visa applications have costs too. And some of them are very expensive. So just think of all this hard work you have to do, all the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into this. And at the end of it all, there's still a chance that your visa could get rejected. Oh, that's if you're even lucky to get a visa appointment in the first place, because a lot of the times the slots are fully booked and you have to wait sometimes months, and there's nothing you can do about it. At the end of the day, all this stress is simply no one else's problem but yours. Deal with it. The Passport Index is a global ranking system that evaluates the strength of a country's passport based on the level of access that it grants to destinations around the world without requiring a visa. Passports are ranked according to the number of countries that their holders can enter visa-free or with visa on arrival access, and this just shows the differences and inequalities when it comes to travel freedom. The two most popular passport indexes are the Global Passport Index and the Henley Passport Index, which I'll be using for this video, since it describes itself as the original and most authoritative ranking of all of the world's passports. Now, according to the Henley Passport Index, as of 2024, if you're holding a passport from Singapore, then you're sitting at the top of the list with access to 195 countries visa-free. Oh my, I can't even imagine if I had this freedom. Anyway, Nigeria is a I'm still scrolling. A long way down at number 95. So I can only visit 45 countries visa-free. And by the way, most of the countries I can visit are other West African states. So, but for 28 countries, I can get a visa after arriving in the country, hopefully. And for the remaining 143 countries, I have to apply for visas beforehand. At the bottom of the list is Afghanistan with unrestricted access to a whopping 27 countries. Now, what I find interesting about these indexes is that you can also analyze how the rankings have changed over the years. And in Nigeria's case, I can see how our passport has pretty much just gotten worse. From 2006 to 2024, there has just been a decline in our ranking. Which begs the question, how do these rankings even change? What are the factors that contribute to this? Basically, it just comes down to economic stability and international relations. Countries with a higher GDP per capita tend to have more visa-free destinations, and countries with higher levels of violence, terrorist attacks, and ethnic tensions may have less travel freedom. And in the same way, diplomatic ties, trade agreements, and political stability between countries often lead to easier entry requirements. Mostly, there's this reciprocity thing going on. Countries with strong economic or security partnerships are more likely to offer mutual visa waivers. And on the flip side, countries with strained relations or security concerns can lead to restrictive entry policies. So essentially, the strength of a passport is not just a reflection of national wealth or status, but it's actually a very dynamic indicator of evolving international alliances or geopolitical tensions. A lot of people with passport privilege just don't really understand the struggle for others, and it's not really their fault because their circumstances are just different. They're lucky. But the truth is, for those of us at the bottom of the passport rankings, we're pretty much just enduring the consequences of our country's weak international relations and political instability, which is a shame. Passport privilege isn't just about who gets to travel more easily. It's about access. Access to opportunities, experiences, jobs, and even respect. The way you're treated, not just by immigration officers, but also by businesses and just other people in general. A strong passport means that you have an easier time taking a dream job in a different country, starting a business, or just simply exploring the world without fear of being turned back at the border. But for millions of people around the world, their passport defines not just where they can travel, but how they're viewed, sometimes as a threat rather than a visitor. So what can we do with all this knowledge? Well, first, let's acknowledge that passport privilege does exist. If you have a strong passport, recognize the privilege that comes with it. Secondly, use that freedom wisely. By all means, travel, but also engage with the cultures that you visit. Learn from them, share stories. Don't travel like an entitled person thinking you deserve the most because you come from a better country. Be a good ambassador of where you're from, wherever you go. And most importantly, understand that the privilege to explore the world isn't something that everybody can take for granted. Remember that stereotyping based on passports is a very real thing, and it affects people's lives in different ways. And finally, if you're feeling a bit generous, consider supporting organizations and initiatives that work to make travel more accessible to people. And maybe one day we'll all get the chance to flip open our passport and step into new adventures without the red tape. So next time you're rushing through airport security, if you make it there, remember that the little booklet in your hand is more than paper. It is power. Use it wisely. If you're interested in hearing more of my travel stories or just wanting to learn some travel tips, please check out my channel. I have quite a few of those videos and there's a lot more that I'll be making as well. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.